Well, welcome viewers, Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist. Central Coast, New South Wales, Australia. Nobody knows better than this woman. She's warning the Western world.
Lebanon used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. Most people don't know that. When they think of the Middle East, they think it's all Islamic countries. But Lebanon is the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair. We prided ourselves on our multiculturalism. We welcomed everyone to our country, especially from the surrounding Arabic countries, because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created in the heart of the Middle East. Muslims used to send their children to come study in our universities because we had built the best universities in the Middle East. They graduated and worked in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Lebanon was known as Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. And as Christians, we focused on education. Education was very important to us. You know, we educated girls and boys, you know, no difference. We were living the good time. Unfortunately, all that began to change by the 70s because of two things. The enlargement of the Islamic population in Lebanon, because we Christians marry one spouse until death do us part. We don't have many kids. Muslims, on the other hand, are allowed to marry up to 4 wives at a time. Now, of course, not all of them do it, but enough of them do it that in our country, in Lebanon, by the 70s, the Muslims became the majority. And once they became the majority, they started massacring the Christians and killing the Christians. I remember in 1974.
So this is what we've got to start listening to. We're not listening to the warnings. It's like we're ignorant. Everything was okay until the Muslims got a foothold, and then they come out from under their carpet. Their skeletons came out of the closet. And that's to annihilate everything they can. And now I want you to listen to this very, very carefully.
Alaikum. Peace to you all. My name is Saba Ahmed. I'm a law student at American University. I am here to ask you a simple question. I know that we portray Islam and all Muslims as bad, but there's 1.8 billion Muslim followers of Islam. We have 8 million plus Muslim Americans in this country, and I don't see them represented here. But my question is, how can we fight an ideological war with weapons? How can we ever end this war? The jihadist ideology that you talk about, it's an ideology. How can you ever win this thing if you don't address it ideologically?
Great question. I am so glad you're here, and I am so glad you brought that up because it gives us an opportunity to answer. What I find so amazing is since the beginning of this panel, which we are here about Benghazi attack against our people, not one person mentioned Muslims. We are here against Islam, or we're launching war against Muslims. We are here to discuss how 4 Americans died and what our government is doing. We were not here to bash Muslims. You were the one who brought up the issue about most Muslims, not us. And since you brought it up, allow me to elaborate with my answer. There are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world today. Of course, not all of them are radicals. The majority of them are peaceful people. The radicals are estimated to be between 15 to 25%, according to all intelligence services around the world. That leaves 75% of them peaceful people. But when you look at 15 to 25% of the world Muslim population, you're looking at 180 million to 300 million people dedicated to the destruction of Western civilization. That is as big of the United States. So why should we worry about the radicals, 15 to 25%? Because it is the radicals that kill. Because it is the radicals that behead and massacre. When you look throughout history, when you look at all the lessons of history, most Germans were peaceful, yet the Nazis drove the agenda. And as a result, 60 million people died, almost 14 million in concentration camps, 6 million were Jews. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Russia, most Russians were peaceful as well. Yet the Russians were able to kill 20 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at China, for example, most Chinese were peaceful as well. Yet the Chinese were able to kill 70 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Japan prior to World War II, most Japanese were peaceful as well. Yet Japan was able to butcher its way across Southeast Asia, killing 12 million people, mostly killed with bayonets and shovels. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. On September 11th in the United States, we had 2.3 million Arab Muslims living in the United States. It took 19 hijackers, 19 radicals to bring America down to its knees, destroy the World Trade Center, attack the Pentagon, and kill almost 3,000 Americans that day. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. So for all our powers of reasons and us talking about moderate and peaceful Muslims, I'm glad you're here. But where are the others speaking out? And since you are the only Muslim representative, till the end. Thank you. Thank you. And since you're the only Muslim representative in here, you took the limelight instead of speaking about why our government, and I assume, are you an American? You're an American citizen. So as an American citizen, you sat in this room and instead of standing up and saying a question or asking something about our 4 Americans that died and what our government is doing to correct the problem, you stood there to make a point about peaceful, moderate Muslims. I wish you brought 10 with you to question about how we can hold our government responsible. It is time we take political correctness and throw it in the garbage where it belongs and stop calling it.
As a child in her native Lebanon, my first guest was a victim of radical Islamic terrorism. Today, she is a world-renowned expert, author, and speaker on the subject of fighting terrorism and defending freedom. She's addressed the United Nations, and she's the founder of Act for America, the largest national security grassroots organization in America. Her new book is going to be released on September 11th, appropriately. It's called Rise, in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom. I'm honored to welcome Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, it is so nice to have you here. Wherever you go, controversy seems to follow.
I know, can you believe it?
Yes, I can. I've been around you before. So, but let's talk about why. You're outspoken when it comes to the issue of securing this country and making it safe. I think a lot of people might understand you better if they knew where you came from and what you saw as a child growing up.
Exactly. People ask me, where does this passion come from, Brigitte? You see, my 9/11 happened to me in Lebanon in 1975, when radical Islamists blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded, as they shouted, Allahu Akbar, under the rubble wounded, as they shouted, Allahu Akbar. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months, and later ended up living in a bomb shelter 6 feet underground in an 8 by 10 room without electricity and no water and very little food. And that's where I lived for 7 years of my life, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, robbed of my youth. So I understand what happens when people turn a blind eye to evil, thinking, it's not going to happen to me. It's all the way over there. Let them all kill each other. Well, over there is no longer contained over there. It's over here, and we must protect America.
Well, we really must. And it's clear that there is a growing influence of radicalism. I don't think every Muslim, I know many Muslims, and many of them are appalled that people in the name of Islam would do horrible things. And that's not your beef, but you have been very outspoken that we have turned a blind eye to the radicalization of the religion and to weaponizing it into wanting to kill anyone who didn't agree with them. How dangerous is it in America right now?
It is very dangerous. Look, just because we are distracted with other things does not mean our enemy forgot about us. Just a few weeks ago, we had the man in New Mexico with the compound training children to shoot up schools. Can you imagine if this would have happened, if he would have carried on with that?
Just because we forgot about it doesn't mean our enemy has forgotten about it. And what's so concerning right now is now we're seeing a coalition of the leftists and the Islamists coming together against America and coordinating. So on one side, you know, a few years ago, we'd be worried about the suicide bomber walking into a room like this and blowing us all up to smithereens.
We checked everybody out. Everybody's cool. You're okay. Except that one guy on the third row. I'm a little worried about him.
But what's happening right now, we're worried also just as much about Antifa and the left and people who hate cops and want to kill cops. We cannot lose law and order in this country. And that's exactly why I wrote Rise. Rise in defense of Judeo-Christian values and freedom. And we need to come together as a nation, throw political correctness in the garbage, and especially Christians and people who love this country need to come together and stand up in defense of America.
The book that you've written is, I think, very important because it's a book that talks about how that we as individual citizens do need to rise up, and there is an attack, an assault on the Judeo-Christian foundation of the country. Explain where that assault is headed right now.
America is being transformed before our very eyes. The flag that once flew on every street corner in the United States is now considered a hate symbol on college campuses. Patriotism is seen as hateful. Our police officers are being killed by thugs and criminals, while the mainstream media victimizes their killers. Freedom of speech is being eliminated by the tyranny of intolerance. Christmas is under assault. The very foundation of our nation is under assault. And I speak to a lot of Christians and they say, oh, Brigitte, I'm praying about it. It's not enough to pray. It's important to pray. But Jesus himself was an activist. Jesus stood up against evil. Jesus didn't sit on the sidelines and said, I'm going to pray about it. So this is why, and at the end of every chapter I wrote, I not only lay out the problem and educate, but at the end of every chapter, I have a section titled Rise Up and Act. Because you can pray, you can hope for America, you can wish for America, but without taking action, nothing happens.
Brigitte, you talk in the book about the need for securing borders and having a genuine control on the immigration system. It's a major theme that you've developed in the book Rise. So I want you to discuss how are we doing on that in America?
We're doing bad right now. We're doing very bad right now, and this is exactly why we need to stand with President Trump in securing our borders, controlling our immigration, fixing our visas, the chain migration, ending chain migration. Look, I came to this country as an immigrant. I understand what it's like to want to come to America. I paid for my airline ticket. I paid for my attorneys. I paid for my doctor's visits to make sure I'm tested for every disease coming into the country that I don't have any. And I had to study a 2-inch thick book written by the Daughters of the American Revolution about America's history and our heritage, and pass a written exam as well as a verbal exam in English about our history before I became an American. By the time I became an American, I knew more about America than my American-born husband.
I have no doubt that it's true that you know more about America than a lot of Americans do, and I'll be honest with you, a whole lot more than some of the members who've been elected to the Congress. I think that's pretty
right.
so. You do discuss in the book, and I want to get into this because you're not against immigration, obviously. You're the product of immigration.
No, exactly.
But you wanted to have some sanity applied to it.
Right. And speaking of sanity, to give you an example, and I give many examples in the book, the city of Denver, Colorado, in May 2017, allowed defecation on the street because now it's no longer a crime. Why? Because they have a lot of illegal immigrants, and up to that point, it was a crime. And if the police arrests you, they can deport you because you are illegal. So the city of Denver decided, you know what? Maybe we need to bring down our standards a little bit and allow people to defecate on the street because we want to keep them here. The city of Denver has a bigger problem than Philadelphia and San Francisco. Is that what we want for the country?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So we are lowering our standards to accommodate the standards of people who are coming from third world countries who do not share our values and who do not want to assimilate. For those who truly want to come to America and claim political asylum or whatever they want to do, there are ports of entry, they can do that. And those who want to come here legally, they can. I came here legally. I studied, I worked, I pay my taxes, I became a part of the American fabric. Those are the type of immigrants we want.
You also mentioned, and our audience certainly appreciates, because that's really what has made America an amazing country, is people have come from all over the world. But when they came here, they didn't come to be who they once were. They came to be Americans, which meant they could keep many of their cultural norms, but they they wanted to be a part of this melting pot. I wanted to mention that in the book you also discuss that TSA, an organization in our government that we have spent billions of dollars to create and fund, has not been effective. What do you mean by that?
Of all the organizations that were created as a part of DHS after 9/11, most Americans will never come in contact with any of them except for the TSA, because we all have to travel, we all have to take vacations. The TSA has a 95% failure rate. 95%. Do you see that?
Sounds like Keith's third grade over there. I think he's...
So we spend $2.1 billion on these machines. You walk through airports and you raise your hands and, you know, they twirl around you. Those machines can detect anything and everything except explosives. You can walk through one of these machines with a gun taped to the side of your leg, walk straight through that machine, and that machine will not pick up that gun. One blogger did that and posted a video of himself. 2 million people saw it. So the TSA was embarrassed. They told their employees, now you need to pat down every 5th passenger to make sure that we show the American public that we're taking care of them, we're protecting them. So this is the type of details that I give in the book that will shock the American public. Another example, people say, oh, I don't care. You know, I know it's costing us a lot of money. It's costing the average American, every single one of you sitting in this audience, an average of $23,000 to $24,000 per person, the cost of the war on terror. You take that for a family of 4, that's almost $100,000. If any of you would have taken that money, put it in an S&P conservative 500 index earning 8% return, you would have had right now almost $500,000 in your bank account. So for anyone who says this war on terror doesn't affect me, they may want to reconsider and read the numbers that I share in the book.
I think it is an incredibly important book for people to get and to read, and I think it will open some eyes. I want to say my thanks to Brigitte Gabriel for joining us. Her new book, it's called Rise, in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom. It is definitely a must-read. Now, if you go online to risetoact.com and pre-order the book before the release date of September 11th, which is coming up real soon, you're going to receive 3 free gifts, including a free copy of the e-book version.
Into Parliament. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Parliament. Free Palestine.
Thank you.